All right. Well, welcome everybody. We want to make sure that everybody, um, just want to welcome everybody and we really appreciate the time that you're spending, out of your day, out of your evening tonight to join us for this. We are really excited to have Dr. Joseph Chang, who is the founder of Pharmanex and the Chief Scientific Officer of Nu Skin Enterprises, now with us this evening. And we're excited to be able to kind of go back and forth with him. And, uh, you know, for those of you that I have not met or don't know, my name is Scott Bennett. I've been involved with Nu Skin and Pharmanex now for about almost 18 years. This August will actually be 18 years, believe it or not. And Joe has really truly been a great friend and mentor throughout this entire time. But more importantly, he has led this company with product and innovations and, from a scientific perspective. And that's really what we want to spend tonight talking about is what has set Pharmanex apart and really want to, kind of wind back the clock a little bit, Joe, with you tonight, as far as, what is, maybe start with, kind of do like an interview style, here where we just go back and forth a little bit. But if you could maybe highlight some of your background and, your education and things like that to start out, and then we'll start talking about what you did before Pharmanex. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, sure, Scott. Yeah, we'll go along those lines. And well, first of all, hi everybody on the call. And I gather some of you may be somewhat new to this company called Nu Skin, and this would be the first time you might be hearing about what we're trying to do here at Nu Skin. And personally, some I may share some of your experiences because back in 1995, that's when I co-founded this company called Pharmanex with another colleague of mine, Michael Chang. Both of us, before that, we were actually working and directing drug discovery. I was with a company called Wyeth, now since been integrated into Pfizer, and Michael was with another company that you may have heard of. It's called Merck in New Jersey, and he was working in drug discovery as well. So between us, we were directing R&D teams of about 200 to 300 scientists, actually, focusing on particular therapeutic areas. And myself, I was more interested in arthritis, immunology, asthma, and so on, in inflammation in general. That was my field of interest and responsibility at Wyeth. And Michael was more from the medicinal chemistry side of things, and he was more focused on discovering metabolic interventions, i.e., particularly in cholesterol. In fact, he was most responsible for discovering a cholesterol-lowering drug. At that time, it was lovastatin. Subsequently, now obviously sold by Merck under the brand name Mevacor. Anyway, as we went through our careers in those drug companies, we sort of came to the realization that yes, it was obviously a good approach, i.e., focusing on particular diseases and so on, and and discovering synthetic chemicals, molecules to try and intervene in a particular disease. But after many years of that kind of research and so on, we both of us almost spontaneously or individually came to the conclusion that perhaps we may wish to sort of really look at prevention of diseases. In other words, rather than trying to catch a horse that has bolted from the barn, is to see whether we can keep the horse in the barn and in the stable. That may offer another alternative approach to wellness in general. So the more we thought about it back in 95, the more we thought it could be the basis of a new company, more on prevention and looking at nutritional interventions more than anything else. So fundamentally, that's how we started a company called Pharmanex back in 95, as I mentioned. And when we say, well, how are we going to differentiate ourselves, if you will? And when we look around the landscape at that point in time, we quickly came to the realization that many of these companies, so-called supplement companies and so on, they were created not so much on the premise on using science as an approach, but really a more, we we like to think it was more based on a wet finger in the air approach, very anecdotal, very non-evidence based on nutritional supplementation and so on. If somebody tells them that a particular leaf, for example, is good, and they'll take the word for it and literally launched a product based on that particular natural leaf and whatever, almost literally overnight. So we thought we could do better and really using a science-based pharmaceutical approach, if you will, using all the things that we have learned, how to really make a science-based, high quality, consistent product and apply those kinds of approaches into the supplementation or nutritional field.
Yeah,
So that was the story fundamentally we told when we went out to try and raise money and attract investors to start Pharmanex. And frankly, we were both trained as scientists more than anything else, not as business folks. And much to our surprise, we raised about $30 million to start Pharmanex. And with those investments and funding, we actually went and developed 5 products at that time. And one of them turned out to be a cholesterol lowering product too. Anyway, that's Michael's desire to.
And Joe, if I could kind of interrupt right there, and as you're kind of looking at this, and so you're looking at the landscape of the pharmaceutical industry, you're looking at the landscape of the nutritional supplement industry, and you're saying, how can we merge these two?
Yeah.
And that's really kind of how you came up with the name Pharmanex, right?
Yes.
So
as I mentioned to you, Scott, we really wanted, once we have the investment in, we had to come up with a name, and we really didn't want to spend too much money with a marketing organization or an agency to come up with some fancy name. So the more we thought about it, the more pharmaceutical grade and so on, we think, well, why don't we call it Pharmanex? For all intents and purposes, that would signify this is the next evolution of a pharmaceutical company. This is the next generation of that kind of company. So we just call it the next, and putting next at the end and farmer at the beginning. So we came up with the name Pharmanex. That's really the reason.
That makes a lot of sense. And how did Carl Gerasi kind of fit into that mix?
Carl Gerasi, as many of you know of him, he was a Stanford professor, and he was very much involved in drug development as well. And in fact, his background was he was the first scientist to isolate a steroid from some natural yams in Mexico that he discovered. And in fact, you can almost consider Carl Gerasi to be the father of the first oral contraceptive pill. He was that famous and that fundamental in the launch and development of oral contraceptives based on steroids, and it was first discovered in this yam. So, and we know of him. In fact, Michael and I were very close because we were also in the natural product type of research. So we decided that perhaps we would like to invite him to come into Pharmanex and become a sort of a chairman of our scientific advisory board. We really wanted some external advisors from the academic community to really make sure that our science is rigorous and really it's good and stand up to to scrutiny. So he he sort of accepted and said, sure, I can become your chair because I think I believe in what you guys are doing and so on. Well, to a level of belief, he actually became one of our original investors. He actually gave us some money to start Pharmanex as well. So that's how we got Carl to become our chairman. And ever since, he passed away, obviously, unfortunately, a few years ago. But he has stayed with Pharmanex for even after acquisition by New Skin. So,
No, Joe, that it just really speaks a lot to the fact that from the very beginning, you were really looking at this from a scientific perspective of trying to really distinguish yourself like a pharmaceutical company from, the infrastructure from even the very beginning with scientists first and marketing, and everything else sales second. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. I mean, at that time when we started Pharmanex back in '95, uh, we have about 35 to 40 employees or people in the company, and 90% of them were scientists. We wanted to make sure that if we are going to do R&D and if we are going to use a scientific approach to nutritional supplementation, we really have to put some backbone behind it. For intents and purposes, do what we say and not just say what we say. So even back then, more than 90% of Pharmanex consisted of scientists and to build this R&D engine, if you will, to create the Pharmanex products. Yeah. So
If you're looking at that too, I mean, you've got all these scientists, you're employing them, you're moving through stuff, you've got all these guys, on your staff. At the same time, you're doing studies, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest misnomers I personally learned from talking to you and all these other scientists that I now can call friends is that you aren't just people who sit in labs and do things. You want to get out there. You want to do studies. You want to talk to different people. You network with each other. You're constantly, bouncing ideas and trying to create different products out there. And as that happens, as you put that together, you end up doing a lot of double-blind, placebo-controlled, crossover randomized studies, even from the very beginning, not just today.
yeah, it's we have to do that because science is not something that you can talk all the time. You've got to do. That's the fundamental definition of the scientific process. Is that if you believe in a particular hypothesis, you got to prove it out, and that's why you do the double-blind studies because that's a gold standard of proving whether a product works or not. Especially in the body, and most importantly to us as well. We want to make sure the product is safe. So that's another element of the scientific process, or particularly on this kind of nutritional products. After all of us are going to ingest or take these products into our bodies. We got to prove that it's safe as well. So a double-blind study being the gold standard in getting evidence, scientific evidence that is, that allows us to be able to substantiate the claim behind a particular product.
And so that kind of brings us to 1994, 95. By 1996, you guys had, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had about 5 products, and you were in about 39,000 retail locations. All the Rite Aid,
close to 30,000 again at that time. Walgreens, Rite Aid, yeah, all those kinds of pharmacies and drugstores. Yeah.
So at that point, you had a few different offers to be purchased. You're about 2 years into this process, and there you've got people knocking on your door asking to buy your company.
It was an interesting sort of development because being a young company at that time, 95, 97, you had products in those 30,000 stores, and our scientific studies are getting noticed by competitors and even by our former drug companies because they soon woke up to the fact that nutritional supplements are really a good fit, a complementary fit, if you will, to their drug business, the pharmaceutical drugs. So therefore, they think, well, rather than starting ourselves something from ground zero, why don't we look at an acquisition? And since they know us, and we similarly, they say, well, these are guys that came from our world, and therefore they're doing the right science and so on. And therefore, we might want to acquire them. So, in fact, my former company, Wyeth, actually came and made an offer to acquire Pharmanex. And Monsanto, which at that time, I think they have a drug division as well, they too put something on the table to acquire Pharmanex. And then the third company came, and this is a company that we now know called Nu Skin. And frankly, at that time, if some of the new people on the call and so on would appreciate what I'm going to say now, and that is, I've not been involved in network marketing and direct selling industry. I have been in the retailing, right, Walgreens and so on. So when Nu Skin came calling, my first reaction is, I mean, should we consider Nu Skin as a possible partner as well? Because frankly, I mean, if you look at the name, they can't even spell new, So, and but they came all the same and say, yeah, what harm is it to listen to what they have to say? So we had 3 bids on the table, Scott, and it was an interesting decision-making process that we went through to choose Nu Skin out of the 3, because it was not a financial decision, if you will, because the bid on the table, obviously they were all blind bids. When they came in, they were all about the same, plus or minus maybe 10% difference. So the money was not the deciding factor. So and the decision that we made was based more in terms of how can we actually make Pharmanex bigger than what it is, and be able to really share this scientific supplementation approach with a much bigger customer base, and in fact going international. So that's really what Nu Skin brought to the table, in the sense that in the direct selling world, we came to realize that, hey, the chances of the process of going international particularly is going to be much quicker than being through the retailing channel. And we can really, somewhat focus on the science and continue to develop science-based products, because Nu Skin say that they are committed to building and growing this R&D engine that we have already started and making even bigger. And so we say, well, that sounds on paper anyway, that sounds like it's a great commitment. Being a little bit skeptical on my side, I say, well, sometimes promises are not kept. And but nonetheless, there is a commitment to do that, to further invest in R&D and developing this next generation of nutritional supplements. Mm-hmm. So we decided to go in 1998, October. That's when we joined Nu Skin. I like to think that we bought Nu Skin rather than the other way around. But anyway,
I'm sure Blake and Steve like that approach too.
Yeah, indeed. And some of you, once again, what Scott is mentioning are the 2 founders of Nu Skin back in '84, I believe they founded the company. So.
That makes a lot of sense. And so in those discussions, though, they obviously had to talk to you about why they wanted to purchase Pharmanex too. I think you did a great job of laying out why it made sense for you to allow Nu Skin to buy you, or to sell to them. What was it that Nu Skin was looking for, from you?
I think they're looking from us, and obviously, I mean, when they looked at Pharmanex at that time, they saw a science-based company. They saw a scientific engine that is operating very effectively and very efficiently to create really evidence-based nutritional supplements. It's really that particular approach that they really liked, and being able to say that how we develop our nutritional supplements is really based on scientific evidence and not just hearsay. That's really the key, and the interest that they had in Pharmanex. So they say, if we take this, the beginning of an incredible R&D engine, and apply it, because in new skin there is also another category that we have in skincare, you know. So that's growing as well. That's how new skin first started, is with skincare, to apply the same type of science to skincare, because skin biology was also beginning to emerge as a very exciting approach to develop the next generation of skincare products. So he said the science that we do is equally applicable to that. So they see there's a lot of synergy to for this engine to drive both the categories, you know,
So,
and I
so
think it's
going,
proven out.
yeah, and well, going along those same lines, so in October of '98, they purchase you. They don't launch any products, through their channel until January of '99. But how is it that you set up the scientific infrastructure inside of Nu Skin? So I mean, you've obviously grown it. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar company instead of $100 million company. How have you developed and set up that infrastructure to continue with that R&D and even increase it?
Well, um, the engine is already in place, right? So, and we know exactly how to do it and so on. All it needed was additional investment to do it, to take it to the next level. So when we first came in, there was already an idea and a vision to really create a new facility to house the R&D folks. Okay, so by that time, it took a few years to get there, but nonetheless, the vision was already in place. There was a plan to do that. So when we came in, we had our facility. We obviously expanded the scientists, and as of today, we have probably around 75 senior scientists working, comprising this R&D engine now. We grew almost more than double, what we started with. And then, New Skin, a few years later, it was what, 2011? What is it, 20? Yeah, about that, 2012 and so on. To build this innovation center, a brand new state-of-the-art research facility to have our scientists and to work in. And we continue to grow. And over that time, we haven't stopped. We had continued to develop our ideas, and we are an anti-aging company, if you will. So the obvious question that we were asking in R&D was, okay, fine. If you're doing anti-aging, the fundamental question is, do you want to cover up the signs or the symptoms of aging with your products, which we had done? And is there another way of doing it that's going to bring even bigger and wider benefits to the body, whether it's in the skin or the rest of the body? And that's how we came up with this idea that perhaps we should drill deeper into the body, down to the genetic level, and look for sources of aging at that level. Because fundamentally, since 2003, there is a huge, profound realization that our body is fundamentally regulated by genetic expression, of these. They've mapped the whole human genome, if you will, consisting of about 25,000 genes, plus or minus. And these are the genes that control what we do, how we behave, how our body can stay healthy. So, and now, with that realization, we say, okay, can we really execute and be able to do something at the genetic level? And that's where we starting to think, well, yes, we can. We have all the product development and capability in Nu Skin, but we need some external support or external help, insights, and that's how we came eventually to acquire this biotech company called LifeGen. The two geneticists and anti-aging researchers who actually started a company in Wisconsin, out of University of Wisconsin, and we bought that company to bring that genetic knowledge into Nu Skin to begin our, now we know one, now we call it the age lock approach, to anti-aging. So
I want to come back. I want to come back to that, but I want to, you skipped over real quick. Like, so we have a new innovation center, a new lab in Provo at the headquarters. At that exact same time, they built a new R&D facility in Shanghai as well.
yes,
and then we also have a clinical research center in Beijing. Why do we have two labs and a clinical research center? Why would we do that instead of just one lab and call it a day?
Yeah. The reason we built and developed a R&D center in China was really based on when we look at all the natural product ingredients that we put into our final products, okay, we sort of came to the realization that many of these natural products are coming out from China. All right. So, and therefore we need some physical presence, of physical R&D presence in China to make sure that the raw materials that we get to start the product development process, they are absolutely up to our specifications in terms of purity, in terms of having enough active ingredients for us to extract. Because remember when I told you, right, at that time, most of our competitors, if you will, would just take a ground up, it would take a leaf, grind it up into a powder. They have no idea where those active ingredients, whether they exist in that leaf or not. It's just because somebody told them that this leaf is medicinally or nutritionally beneficial. They assume that it has the active ingredients. And they will take that and put it into a capsule and say, here, this is good for you. We didn't think that was good enough, So we wanted to make sure that if this leaf is coming out from China, and as I say, many natural products are derived from herbs and so on, and they do come from China, we want to make sure that what we buy or what we purchase from suppliers is in fact the real McCoy. It doesn't contain any toxic contaminants, because not all natural products are safe. I mean, to me, that's a myth. You really have to make sure that that natural product hasn't absorbed from the dirt or from the soil that it was grown in, that it would take up heavy metals and so on. So we need an R&D center primarily focusing on determining and analyzing these raw materials before they come over to the States and to our R&D center over here for further development. So we have a pretty extensive R&D center in China to do just that bit of the research.
At the same time, Joe, you got, we got our own clinical research center, but more importantly, of those 70, 75 scientists, we have quite a few of those, and say at least half are PhDs in multiple different disciplines. And can you kind of dive into why that's important in your mind?
Yeah, I think in today's world, when you do R&D, science has become a team sport. It's really not one particular individual or one particular field of expertise is sufficient to develop a product. For example, I mean, we need chemists to be able to analyze and identify the active ingredients. A biologist will not be able to do that. So we have, several members of our scientific team. They are chemists. They know how to analyze the chemical structure of an active ingredient. But after they've done that, we still need biologists to be able to look at that molecule and conduct the biological studies to see where it's being active in the cell and tissue, and what biochemical pathways that this particular ingredient is affecting, and so on and so forth. That would be biologist work. And then we need nutritionists, because these are the guys that know how to, what's important in the diet, what are the micronutrients, macronutrients, and so on. So we have nutritionists as well. And now that we're doing genetic work, we have molecular biologists as well. So they know exactly where to find those genes in the body, if you will, what those genes, when they are expressing something, what particular protein is it making. So we have those guys as well. And then finally, obviously, we have folks who can actually conduct proper double-blind clinical studies too. So yeah, it's people, scientists from multiple research fields that come together.
I think it's absolutely amazing when you put all that together and understand the logic behind it.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense that you kind of start looking at all these other nutritional supplement companies and wondering, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
Why do you have one scientist or no scientists?
Yeah.
And call yourself a science-based nutrition company. Yeah, so it is kind of interesting. But along those same note, if we wind back the clock before LifeGen to 2002, you come across and are introduced to Werner Gellerman at the University of Utah, and he's developed this new biophotonic scanner that looks kind of archaic, and large. How did that all come together? And how did we end up with the scanner the way it is now?
I'm glad you bring that up, because when I was first introduced to Werner Gellerman, he's obviously a physicist, and he claims he has some technology that can actually measure antioxidants non-invasively. So I mean, just that statement alone was rather intriguing to me. I say, yeah, sure. You're just up the road from where we are, and I'll drive up and we can have a look at what you have. So I went up to the University of Utah in his physics lab, and he said, "This is it." I said, "What is it?" And he says, "This is it." And I said, "I thought you were going to show me an instrument." And he says, "Yeah, this is my lab. This is the instrument." So the instrument he was describing was the size of a weapon of mass destruction. I mean, it was so huge. It literally took up his whole lab. And it was laser based, and he was able to measure it. I mean, the science was great. The only little problem that we have is, how am I going to commercialize and develop a machine that everybody can use, rather than having to be a physicist and set up a lab to measure antioxidants. So, and that was the mission and task that we had, because the science was so good and so fundamentally is going to change how we measure antioxidants in the body. And up to that point, frankly, when you talk about an antioxidant supplement, most of us, you literally just have to take my word for it that is good for you, and it gets absorbed into the body, that is going to the right places to exert its benefits, health benefits, and so on. So, and we're all playing that game. And frankly, I said, if we have an instrument that can literally tell you or answer the question, how do you know your antioxidant supplement is working in your body? Then there are no more ifs and buts. It's actual data that you can literally see for yourself, before and after a product. So it's that was the potential that we saw in developing this. Now that we call it a biophotonic scanner. So it took us literally. The task was to reduce what Gellerman had, into the size of a toaster. And I said, that's impossible. That's really difficult in 18 months. And that was the dateline given to us by, rather frankly, silly business people. But anyway.
I'm just shocked you couldn't do it in 3.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So Scott, yeah. So you cut from that cloth, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so we did, and we work our guts out to be able to achieve that. And we came up with the first version 1 of the biophotonic scanner. I think, Scott, it was around 2003.
I actually I have one of the original 5 sitting here in my office.
I'm sure you have. Yes, I
That
think it
came
was
out
around that, right?
That was November of 2002.
2002. There you go. I was not too
6
far.
months.
Mm-hmm.
You put it together in about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then we got production, kind of more production models and stuff starting in February 2003.
So yeah, since then we have now finally the version 3, which I'm hoping is working far, far better than the original version, and much smaller as well. And you can do it within a couple of minutes. So the point was, we, in spite of those trials and tribulations that we had at the very beginning, I think we were able to let people see, how an antioxidant can enter your body and get to the so-called site of action, right? So, and you don't have to sort of get a sample of your blood or whatever body fluid that you might give us and take more than a couple of weeks to get the result. Literally, all you have to do is to put the palm of your hand against this biophotonic scanner, and within minutes, you'll get a result. So it was good. But that's not all, because even at that time when we first launched it, we still had some unanswered questions. And this is where the science kicks in. What does it mean, if you measure the so-called scanner carotenoid score, the SCS score? And does it really have anything meaningful? Because after all, there are quite a few antioxidants floating around that you are not going to measure with the scanner. So what does it really mean? So we had to prove, and we did, because the papers are all published now, that it is really a biomarker for the antioxidant network. And again, here we were taught by Professor Packer from Berkeley, UC Berkeley, where he's again another father of the antioxidant world. And he told us, if you measure this carotenoid, you can really get a good glimpse into the whole network. And we were able to conduct the studies to show that indeed it is a good biomarker. In fact, I would consider, measuring these carotenoids would be about similar to how a physician would look at cholesterol. I mean, that's why you take a cholesterol lowering drug, because cholesterol has been proven to be a biomarker of cardiovascular risk. And here you're measuring a similar analogous molecule to give you a status read on your antioxidant rigor in the body. So we have to do, you would literally, once again, I think that's what we want to really committed to prove with clinical studies, not to say it's good for you, you get this number, but to really have the data to say that indeed it is a meaningful and relevant biomarker. So,
for those of you that are new on this call and listening to this for the first time, we now have over 80 published peer-reviewed clinical trials on the scanner itself. And so it truly has been proven and established. And I mean, Joe, absolute hats off to you and your team for what you've taken from 12 foot by 12 foot room down, and we've shrunk it down 3 different times. We're on the third model, but the 5th version of the scanner itself, and and actually beta testing right now a new software to work with it that we should launch in June, that will just make it even more user friendly and adaptable for everybody. So continuing to invest, hundreds of millions of dollars into that program and making that work is really commendable.
Yeah, it took, I mean, you can imagine, right? We still continue to do studies with the scanner even now as we speak. And, but I think the fundamentals of the value of the scanner for the average consumer, if you will, I mean, there are very few technologies that we can literally put in the hands of consumer, and you guys can look at the data yourself, you know?
You can simplify it to somebody like myself, and now all of a sudden nutrition is, dialed into something that's understandable for the common person.
Yeah.
That's what I think is the most amazing part of the scanner is, I've got 6 children, and my 2-year-old and 4-year-old, they know what a blue score means, and
Yeah.
they know what foods they should eat to get a blue score, and they know that that's important. And if we can make that understandable to, children under the age of 5, then it makes sense in a doctor's setting, in an office, in a healthcare facility or a gym or a spa, where people are coming to get better, feel better, look better, and we know that antioxidants help with all of that. And we're the only company in the world that can prove it.
Yeah.
That's really what sets us apart.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, if we kind of jump from the scanner, and as that evolves through the process, you touched on how you acquired LifeGen and started taking the age lock approach,
Yeah.
to genetic research. You kind of touch base on what is age lock, what is that technology, how does that apply to these different, nutritional supplements as well as skincare products? I mean, it applies, equally to both.
Yeah.
But how does that work?
Yeah, the most important insight, if you will, that we are so much interested in the genes is the fact that they are the original sources of aging. That was the premise we were operating on. That if you look at it, and I like to use the analogy of a waterfall, right? So you really want to stop the water from flowing down and flooding anything at the bottom of it, rather than trying to stop it at the bottom, is to try to really go further upstream. And if you can cut something off upstream, you will be a bit more effective than downstream. So as we trace the aging process with the science, with the scientific data as we know it, it is becoming very increasingly clear that the original or the starting point of the aging process is at the genetic level. So if that is so, then the next question is, and this is where LifeGen kicks in, is it okay? There are 25,000 genes. How do you really know which genes to go after to try and help them to behave? It's not a scientific word, but I think it's good enough to describe what we're trying to do, to behave as if that you were back as a 20-year-old, to reset the genes, if you will, and restore their vibrancy and youthfulness. So, and LifeGen at that time had conducted, I mean, over 30 years of aging research, and came out with a sort of a map where to go to look for these aging or aging related genes. So we have a really specific clusters. It's almost like contact tracing that you're going to hear a lot about in this day and age that we live in today. And we managed to contact trace all the way back to clusters of genes. And those were the ones that our scientists then started to, to sort of evaluate several. We have a huge library of natural ingredients, okay? So we just screen these natural ingredients against these genetic targets, and be able to find which are the ingredients that are the most effective. And here again, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, because through our research, we could never find a single ingredient that does it all, against these genetic targets. So, and we always had to blend several ingredients together uh, that can give us the desired result or outcome against these genes. So that's why you find there's a product that we have launched 3 or 4 years ago that's called Youth. That's how we use all this research to be able to develop that product called Youth. So so this library, this genetic knowledge that we have behind these age-related genes is rather proprietary to Nu Skin, and that's the reason why we bought LifeGen, is to be able to have just exclusive knowledge of this genetic database that is related to the aging process. So and so that's how we acquired LifeGen to do that. It's been a great journey because our age log products, we're beginning to realize very quickly, wait a minute, something that you want is not a universal cluster. Sometimes when you look at the skin, for example, the gene cluster that regulates skin biology and skin health is very different from the gene cluster that regulates lung function, for example, or cardiovascular function.
You mean
So,
you mean
so
you
yeah.
mean it's not just one? It's 25,000 genes. It's not just one of them that takes care of it.
Oh no, oh no, yeah, it would be that simple. I wish my life would be far, far simpler, right? Uh, it's almost like trying to conduct an orchestra. People don't realize. I mean, I've heard of, obviously, several companies or competitors would say, "Hey, look at this telomere as an example. All you have to do is to regulate telomere and preserve that telomere in the DNA, and you would have a great anti-aging product." It's not that simple. Yes, it's an important element, but it's not the only element. I mean, you can't play the Beethoven Fifth Symphony with a violinist. You just can't do it. No matter how great that violinist is, it's just not going to happen. You need a whole orchestra, and that's what the aging process is. Is that it's really an orchestra that's being playing in your body to keep you healthy and to slow down the aging process. If it's out of tune, and that's what gene expression is all about. If the genes are instruments, we're not trying to mutate or change that instrument. It's about getting that instrument to play at the right pitch to express itself, and getting several genes to express themselves in coordination and not out of sync. So that's what our age log approach is all about, and that's why we always have several ingredients blended in the final product.
No, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, as you look at that, now we're coming up kind of here towards the end,
Yeah.
but I do want, another question is, so we've got these great products, we're moving this thing forward. The key to all of this and still making it work is going to be whether or not we can have products that have quality ingredients. And I think it's one of the things that very few people understand is, because we're dealing with natural products and it goes batch to batch and harvest to harvest and and so on and so forth, the process to get the active ingredients into every capsule and making that work is extremely technical. I mean, it's not something that, is just mix it in a bowl and, put it through the blender and put a capsule in it at the end and away we go.
Yeah.
Really, it comes down to, how do we assure that we have quality ingredients that can do that for years to come and have the right actives in every capsule.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about creating this great R&D engine that we have in Nu Skin, right? So again, I'll use an analogy to illustrate why raw materials are equally important. In the computer world, there's always a saying that if you put garbage in, no matter how powerful your computer is, you're going to get garbage out at the other end. Yeah. So, and if you use that sequence and that analogy, I'm hoping that you would sort of appreciate that starting with incredibly pure raw materials makes the whole product development process goes much more quickly and much more efficiently, you know. So there's you can't it's just not possible to use garbage raw materials and expect to get a great product at the other end. Okay, so and therefore again, because of that reality, we are starting and starting our business is growing, and we're going to need more and more of these natural ingredients, and it's becoming harder for the scientists and for our suppliers to give us enough pure and clean raw materials to begin our work. So, and with that realization, we've started a project that is really focusing on seeing whether we can grow all these plants and all these herbs in an environment that we can totally control for purity and not requiring any soil, so that we don't introduce any possible contaminants. We don't need to worry about adding pesticides to control pesticides or fertilizers and so on and so forth. And therefore, you know, if we can control those kinds of factors that comprise the environment for the plants to grow, then I think we can be successful. And that's why we're starting this new technology. Now we're calling it GrowWeave. It's control environment agriculture. So eventually, you know, very soon, we'll be able to grow our sort of source our own raw materials and not be dependent on a supplier or whoever to give us the right materials to start our work.
Now, how do you assure that that's actually clean and effective and quality ingredients? What sets that apart?
Okay, because the control environment, like I said, we can control the temperature, we can control the air, we can control the light, and so on and so forth. All the requirements that a plant needs to grow, and we can avoid using all the possible contaminants that could go that could happen in conventional agriculture. I mean, if you go and try to grow a plant outside in dirt and so on, how can you control that? You're totally at the mercy of the environment, you know, the external environment. Here, I'm not. I'm in totally. I can regulate it. I can sense when the plant will need a particular light wavelength or the right temperature to produce the active ingredients of interest for us. So this technology is going to become more and more powerful as we go along, you know, develop it.
Yeah, we had one question here on the side that said, "Where do you plan on growing these plants?" You know, they're currently being grown in Utah, you know, next to our headquarters. Or
Yeah. But literally, it's in a facility, right? The technology includes it's a control environment, so we can put it in a box and we can put it in a facility that is in a housing, if you will, and we can literally put this housing anywhere in the world to grow. It uses only right now, if I 95% of the water needed for that particular plant, I do not need anymore. I only use 5% of the water, for example, to grow that plant.
And it's also without soil or pesticide, herbicide, or,
Right.
you know, anything else that's needed, because it's controlled environment, you know, 100%.
Yeah. You know, very similar to age dog trying to get your genes to express themselves optimally. And it's actually, we're using the same approach for plants, because plants have genes too, right? We're trying to get the plants' genes to express themselves in a far more efficient way.
It's amazing. It really is just kind of, you bring this whole discussion. I mean, Joe, we've been talking nonstop for 55 minutes. I cannot thank you enough, as far as, you know, coming from, your background in the pharmaceutical industry, and then, transitioning into this nutritional supplement industry, and what you've created is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I do want to ask one last question, before we end this, and that is, when when Nu Skin purchased Pharmanex, I'm sure there was a 1, 2, 3 year clause or something in there that, said you have to keep working with Nu Skin.
Yeah.
But why are you still here? Why are you still part of Nu Skin now as you look through this?
Well, it's more than about the science. I think. I think it's about making sure that I think we want to make a difference, or at least I like to think I'm making a difference. That we are giving you nutritional supplement products that are really truly can bring meaningful benefits to people, to consumers. Okay. So, and when we first started talking about an hour ago roughly, I told you about that commitment, that I was skeptical, that it will be kept, right? But time and time again, I usually review what's happening, and every 5 years or so, and Nu Skin has never backed out of that commitment to make sure that our R&D continues to be the best in the industry, because you do need the R&D to give you great products. I mean, there's no doubt. And they've kept that commitment. They've in fact more than keeping that commitment, because they've invested in this new innovation center that we have. It's no mean feat to spend $200 million to put that facility together. So I think,
Oh, very true.
yeah. So
They gave you all the toys to keep you happy.
yeah, I hope they're more than toys. Yeah. It's
It's
been great. It's been great. Yeah. And also, I mean, it's been 20 years being here. I mean, being able to talk to all of you, and you are going to be consumers of the product as well. That's something that is really different from what I was doing before Pharmanex in the drug industry. I never see anybody really deriving any benefits from the drugs, because I don't touch them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And we enjoy interacting with you as well, and everything else. Joe, I can't thank you enough for your time, your willingness to be with us tonight, in your home office and everything else. Please say hi to your wife for us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. And be safe, everybody. And hopefully, when all this thing is all over, all of you will come visit us in the headquarters. Okay.
Will do. Will
Yep.
do. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Scott. Bye.
All right. Bye.